Hi Lemons, kamusta kayo? Pag-uusapan natin ngayon ay PAS 23 or borrowing costs. It's a technical overview for accounting students or even professionals relating to the Philippine accounting standards. So PAS 23 borrowing costs. Let us begin our lesson for today. What are borrowing costs? By definition, borrowing costs are interest and other costs that an entity incurs in connection with the borrowing of funds. Ano nga ba ito, no? Ano yung borrowing of funds in the first place? So, ang borrowing of funds in the first place ay yan yung, kunyari, pupunta ka sa bangko kasi kailangan mo ng pera para bumili ng bahay or ng kotse pero wala kang sufficient cash on hand. Ang ginagawa mo, naglo-loan ka, no? At yung act of you asking for a loan from the bank, ang tawag doon ay borrowing of funds kasi meron ka ng pera para makabili ka ng gusto mong kotse or bahay. Siyempre sa mundo, wala namang, libre. Lahat ng bagay may cost. And if you borrow funds from the bank, ang charge nila usually, or ini-incur mo, ay interest, no? Kaya kapag nag-loan ka, pinag-uusapan yung annual rate of interest, sinasabi nila 3 or 5%, no? Pwede pang fix or variable yung interest rate na i-apply doon. Depende sa market condition. So, interest is a form of the bank earning money, no? Kasi pinahiram ka nila at yung fee nun or yung cost nun ay magbabayad ka ng interest pabalik. Hindi lang interest, no? Meron pa kasing ibang types of cost na sinasabi. For example, other cost. Yung other cost na sinasabi dito, it can be yung transaction fees, it can be yung origination fees, yung processing fees, etc. Kung ano ba yung mga charge nila. Those are also part of your borrowing costs. So, interest and other costs that an entity incurs in connection with the borrowing of funds. Okay? Ano included dito? Included dito ay yung interest expense, no? Effective interest method. It should have been computed using the effective interest method. Bakit ganun, no, Kuya Lemon? Ang effective interest method kasi is a way of computing interest which takes into account the time value of money. Kapag nag-effective interest method ka, di ba kinukuha mo yung present value nun? Tapos dun sa present value, ang ginagawa mo, yung difference niya, kinoconsider mo yun as interest expense yung in-between, no? In this case, deferred interest expense. Kung yung loan mo as span of 3 years, syempre, drastic yung effect ng time value of money. At ang gusto kasi ng accounting standard, tinitake into account mo siya correctly, and therefore, using effective interest method accounts for your transactions, no, which are actually in substance long-term by nature, and therefore, drastically affected by your time value, no? So in that case, kailangan effective interest method yung gagamitin ng pag-compute. So, interest expense, no, that is computed using the effective interest method is considered included within the concept of borrowing costs. Next, finance charges or those related to leases. Related to sa PFRS 16 leases, no? Kasi meron ng konsepto ng lease liability. Ang lease liability kasi, syempre, di ba pag na-recognize mo yan, nagko-compute ka din ng interest expense, no, from that. Okay, interest expense. Yung interest expense na yan, kasama din yan under borrowing costs ni PAS 23. Exchange differences, foreign currency adjustments. So for example, meron kang loan in US dollar, tapos syempre, i-adjust mo yan to your reporting currency. Yung adjustment na foreign currency, no, kasama din yan sa borrowing costs for those that are related to your interest. So kung yung interest mo ay USD, tas kinonvert mo yung USD into peso, yung foreign currency difference actually na related lang sa interest expense yung included. Hindi lahat. Yung interest expense lang na related dun sa exchange difference from the loan. Okay? From the loan's interest expense in particular. So in short, interest talaga yan, no? Interest, expense, plus other cost. So yun yung definition ng borrowing cost. Ang Ang core principle kasi ng borrowing cost, no, ay ganito. Kapag borrowing cost, ang treatment lang yan either capitalized or expense. Ang borrowing cost, pwede yang i-capitalize if directly attributable siya to the acquisition, construction, or production of a qualifying asset, no? So, dapat directly attributable cost, no, related to acquisition, construction, or production, plus related siya sa qualifying asset. I-discuss natin yung qualifying asset later on. But essentially, dapat directly attributable cost at dapat qualifying asset. Pag nag-pass siya sa dalawang criteria na yan, then yung borrowing cost can be capitalized. Ano meaning ng capitalized? It only means that the borrowing cost, no, the interest expense, would form part of the cost of that asset. So let's say meron kang building amounting to 1 million in terms of your materials. Tapos meron kang 100,000 na interest expense. Ang magiging cost ng building is 1.1 million. So yun yung cost, yun yung capitalization of cost. Itong 1.1 million nalapas yan sa balance sheet mo as an asset. Okay? Which forms part of your qualifying asset. Ngayon, kapag hindi naman siya nag-qualify under capitalization, papasok yan under expense. No? E-expense yan. Kaya sinabi, all other borrowing costs are recognized as an expense in the period in which they are incurred if hindi sila kinapitalize. So, borrowing costs are either capitalized if they are directly attributable to the acquisition, construction, production of number 2, a qualifying asset. Okay? Pag hindi, then expense. Meron ditong general rule na nakalagay, no? If you wouldn't have borrowed the money but for this asset, capitalize it. So essentially, if nag-borrow ka ng pera para lang sa asset, yung interest expense nun ay capitalize kagad. Okay? Pero we'll see later on, may mga special cases kasi na syempre may tinatawag tayong konsepto ng specific, no, a general borrowing, which is we will see later. Kaya itong rule na to na nakalagay dito, be careful, no, na wag mo i-overgeneralize. Kasi alam naman natin sa accounting, lalo na sa borrowing cost ka na, no, hindi lahat ng bagay straightforward. Well, at least meron kang general rule. And di-discuss natin later on kung ano nga ba yung important nuances to take into account. Sinabi ko yung term na qualifying assets kanina. Ano nga ba ang qualifying assets? A qualifying asset necessarily takes a substantial period of time to get ready for its intended use. So, sinasabi dito, dapat yung qualifying asset na to, it must take substantial period of time to get ready. Okay? For its intended use or sale. So, pag sinabi kasi natin get ready, ito yung piniprepare mo, di ba? And dapat related again ang qualifying asset, no, ang interest expense for the qualifying asset to acquisition, construction, or production. Hindi kasi lahat ng bagay mabilis gawin, no? Kailangan may long term, kaya sinasabi dito substantial period of time. So, bago siya magamit. So, for example, manufacturing plant, pag nag-construct ka ng manufacturing plant, it would take you years to do so. And after mo lang matapos siya, after a few years, tsaka mo lang siya magagamit. So, kaya sinasabi na dapat mayroong substantial period of time. Kasi syempre, if you think about it, kapag, let's say, 2 or 5 years yung project, di ba ang lakas ng effect ng time value of money? Kasi ang tagal. So, yun din yung connection dito ng time value of money sa borrowing cost. Kasi dapat meron talagang substantial period of time. And if yung interest expense mo related to the qualifying asset, in this case, the manufacturing plant, is substantial, no? And directly attributable, no? Then, you can capitalize it kasi nga may time value of money na involved. So, qualifying asset, no? Isang example din yung manufacturing plants. Next, power generation facilities, investment properties, and tangible assets. So, software. Bakit software? Pag nag-develop ka kasi ng software, in my experience, matagal yan, no? At hindi lang development yan, meron pang meron pang testing, etc. So, napakatagal niyan minsan. Can take years and ongoing yung development niyan. So, in this case, pwede rin capitalize. Kaya mapapansin nyo, no? Ito, pwedeng PPE, pwedeng intangible asset, pwede ding investment property, pwede ring inventory. Okay? So, mapapansin yun, ang qualifying asset, pwede yung mag-fall into those four as well. Kasi nasabi ng standard, intended use, syempre pag PPE, intangible asset, no? Gagamitin mo yan. Pag sale naman, investments. Ano yung IP? Investment property. Pwedeng i-sale, pwede i-hold. No? Pero dapat yung investment property, under cost model yung pag-account for. Bakit cost model? Kasi sa cost model, dito mo pwede i-capitalize yung interest expense. In other methods kasi, hindi ka naman nagka-capitalize ng interest dun. Under cost model ka lang nagka-capitalize. Okay? What is not a qualifying asset? So number 1, financial assets, no? Asset like stocks or bonds are never qualifying assets, regardless of how long you hold them. Routine inventory, number 2. Those that are manufactured in large quantities on a repetitive basis over a short period of time. So for example, yung yogurt drink na favorite natin, no? Narad yung packaging, favorite ko yun. Ano yun eh? Mabilis lang siguro gawin yun. I don't think na yung isang ganong yogurt na drink, it would take years to build. No, kaya pag maliit lang, wala masyadong effect in time value of money, then there's no need to capitalize it. Kaya pag routine inventory, tas maraming volume yan, then hindi yan qualifying asset. Number 3, those that are ready for purchase. Kasi class, pag ikaw kasi magbi-business, pwede ka naman bumili on credit. Pwede ka nga mag-loan eh, kung malaki yung amount eh. Pero kasi hindi naman lahat ng binibenta mo took a long time to prepare. So for example, may kakilala ko nagbebenta siya ng books. At pang-capitalize siya sa book is yung loan. Pero kasi yung book, pag na-print yan, yun na yun eh. Wala nang gagawin na iba eh. Wala nang customization, di ba? Or pre-preparation. Nakuha niya na yung stock niya. Perfectly ready for purchase. So pag ganun, hindi na dapat kinakapitalize yung interest related to the loan. Kasi ang binili niya is not a qualifying asset. It's an asset that is ready and purchase. So yung tatlong yan, kapag nakita niyo yung nature ng asset is like that, and hindi siya qualifying asset, then ang treatment dun sa interest expense is expense. It would then go to the income statement. Kailan nagko-comments ang capitalize? Capitalization starts only when all 3 conditions are met. Number 1, no? Expenditures. Kapag meron ng cash outflow. Number 2, borrowing costs are being incurred. Interest is accruing. So for example, nag-loan ka January, tapos February na ngayon. Meron ng passage of time, and therefore, there is actually incurred interest already. Third, dapat may activities dun sa qualifying asset mo. So for example, magtatayo ka ng building, no? Yung building na yun, dapat, pag mako-consider mo siya as a qualifying asset lang if meron ng activity. So let's say, inaayos na yung papers, no? Meron ng permits, tapos meron ng groundbreaking, yun, mako-consider na yun as activity. So magko-comments ka na ng pag-capitalize ng interest mo. So again, in the example, kung January yung nag-loan ka, tapos na-fulfill yung criteria ng January na meron ng groundbreaking, no? Na meron cash outflow, and interest is being accrued, no? Pwede ka na capitalize ng interest moving forward. Yung expenditures dito pala, do take note, cash outflow ang meaning dyan. Cash outflow, CFO. Merong konsepto sa borrowing cost na specific at general borrowing. Pag-uusapan natin yung specific borrowing muna. Specific borrowing are those funds borrowed specifically for the purpose of obtaining a qualifying asset. So for example, yung isang company, magpapatayo siya ng building. Naghanap siya ng financier at nakakita siya ng isang small bank. Yung small bank na yun, sinabi na, ano po bang purpose? Sinabi ni CEO ng company na kailangan ng pera, sabi niya, we are borrowing specifically to build this building. Can you loan in connection with that particular undertaking? Pag pinaloan sila, tas intended yan solely for the building's construction, then it is considered specific in nature. Kasi binaro niya lang talaga yan for the sake of creating the building. Ano nga ba yung capitalizable amount? Siyempre, yung actual borrowing cost or yung interest incurred minus investment income. Do take note, pwede kasi pag magaling yung working capital management team ng isang company, pwede nilang i-invest yung funds for the meantime into time deposits para mag-earn yan ng mas malaking interest as compared to just keeping the money inside a savings account, no? So in that case, merong interest income. Sinasabi dito na dapat ima-minus mo rin yung interest income. So let's say for the year, meron kang 9 months, no? Na meron kang na-incur na interest expense amounting to 100,000. Tapos let's say yung last 3 months, no? Or yung 3 months within the year, investment income yung in-earn yan. Kasi tinime deposit mo muna, nag-earn ng 20,000. Dapat yung kakapitalize mo lang dyan ay yung 80,000. Yun lang yung capitalizable amount. Kasi in substance, meron kang kinita from the funds sa specific borrowing. And ginagawa talaga yan pag sa working capital management. Para lang, syempre, para mas efficient. Para kahit hindi pa nag-start yung project, let's say na-delay, pwede ka nang mag-earn pa din dun sa pera na hiram mo. Let's say through time deposits, no? So, yun yung nangyayari under specific borrowing. In class, do take note na hindi lang minsan 100,000 yan. Minsan, interest income and expense, it can be millions, even billions at times, no? So, malaking pera yun. Lalo na kung marami kang pinapasahod na tao, malaking bagay na i-invest mo muna yung malaking pera mo into time deposit for you to earn and cover a bit of your operational costs. Next, yung tinatawag na general borrowing. Funds borrowed generally and used for the qualifying asset. So for example, humiram ka lang ng funds for a general purpose. Let's say general business. So let's say humiram ka ng 50 million, no? Yung 40 million dito for your operations and then yung 10 for some reason nilagay mo siya into your qualifying asset. Pero itong 50 million, ang intention niyan is just a general loan. Kasi pag sa bangko, hindi mo naman necessarily kailangan na bahay lang, pambili ng bahay or pambili ng kotse. Minsan, discretionary loans lang na gusto ko mag-loans. No? So, give me money and then I'll just pay you later on. Kapag hindi siya intently for the qualifying asset, then it should be considered as general borrowing. Funds borrowed generally and used for the qualifying asset. In this case, anong nangyayari? Yung average carrying amount multiplied by capitalization rate, yung ginagamit mo na capitalizable amount. The capitalization rate is the weighted average of the borrowing cost applicable to the borrowings of the entity that are outstanding during the period other than specific borrowing. We will see more examples later on, but for now, kailangan i-take note nyo lang yung formula. Okay, concept muna. Let's go to suspension of capitalization. Kailan mo hinihinto yung capitalization? During extended periods in which active development is interrupted. So for example, pinahalt ng city government yung construction. So halt din yung interest expense. Pero do not suspend if delay is necessary. Minsan naman, foreseeable yung delay and nangyayari talaga sa industry. So let's say concrete curing, kailangan ng time no para mag-cure siya muna. And it's just a few days or just a few weeks. Do not suspend capitalization. Substantial technique or admin work continues. So kapag let's say hindi naman drastic yung pagkahinto ng project, ang nangyari lang sinabi, meron tayong 5 workflow, pero yung isa kailangan i-halt. Since yung 4 ongoing pa din, pwede mo pa rin mag-commence yung capitalization of borrowing. Kasi nga, isa lang yun ang hintong workstream So, ganun yung na sinasabi dito. Meron pa ring admin or substantial technical stuff, which is continued. And yung sinabi ko kanina, delay is temporary and predictable. Actually, all of these 3 items can still coexist, no? Or in fact, they can coexist in the industry. So, yung pinag-usapan natin kanina, suspension, temporary pause. Ngayon, cessation. Pag sinabing cease, stop. As in stop, and then yung pag-capitalize. And capitalization ceases when substantially all the activities necessary to prepare the qualifying asset for its intended use or sale are complete. Pag complete na yung asset mo, yun na yun. Huwag ka na mag-capitalize. So key points, the asset is ready, even if routine administrative work continues. If completed in parts, capitalization ceases for each part as it is completed. So, ang meaning lang yan is, syempre, minsan kasi hindi mo nababayaran yung loan kagad eh. Minsan hindi naman sabay yan eh. Let's say, natapos yung project November. Tapos yung maturity ng loan mo is December pa. So, merong 1 month na gap, di ba? Yung 1 month na gap na yun, since tapos na yung project, hindi mo na kailangan i-capitalize. Kasi wala nang ongoing na production or manufacturing or construction, di ba? If completed in parts, let's say isang malaking building siya, let's say yung 5 floors, meron siyang 5 floors, tapos yung 5 floors merong 5 loans na iba-iba, no? Yung, let's say, natapos yung top floor kagad. Pag natapos na yung top floor kagad, then magsa-stop na yung capitalization dun sa part na yun. But for all other floors, then it's just going to proceed. So, mayroon tayong practical example, no? XYZ Corp constructs a factory in Cavite. Loan is specific at 10% and construction is January to December. Excess funds invested earned 50,000. So, ang capitalizable cost natin ay 950,000. So, ang dali lang, di ba? So, this is an example actually of a case where the borrowing is specific. So, paano KuyaLemon kung general yan? And paano kung mix? Okay? So, yun yung pag-uusapan natin in our next videos. So, this is just part 1. And nag-focus tayo sa konsepto. Let's try to do computations. So, thank you for watching. Please, let's see each other in the next video. God bless everyone.